In the news headlines near the top of the hour, there's been another bombing in South Africa, this one near a supermarket in Pretoria. At least 15 people were injured, no deaths reported. It's the 12th bombing since the government imposed a new state of emergency 3 weeks ago. Tens of thousands of people returned to work in Chile today after 2 days of anti-government strikes and demonstrations. The 2 days of unrest left 6 people dead and 56 others injured. More than 600 people were arrested. Kraft Food Incorporated is recalling its Polar Bar ice cream product and is temporarily closing a Virginia plant. That makes it because of a discovery of a deadly bacteria. The ice cream bars can be identified by the code 516426. No illness has been linked to the contamination. Farm Aid 2 is underway in Manor, Texas. 75 performers will take to the stage for 18 hours of rocking and rolling and raising money for the nation's hard-pressed farm communities. And the Goodwill Games are underway in the Soviet Union. One world record has already been set. Vladimir Selnikov of the Soviet Union winning the men's 800-meter freestyle swimming event in the record time of 7 minutes, 50.64 seconds. That's the headlines to the moment. I'm Don Miller in Atlanta, and Flip Spiceland is standing by here now to give us an idea of what kind of weather we're going to get. Flip?
You got 3 more weeks of saying names like that, Don. We have just a bit of rain scattered around today on this 4th of July. You can see some of it up here in the Great Lakes area. This was very stormy last night. Well, still some pretty good storms in there. We had one report of a tornado touching down and some wind damage across portions of northern Minnesota. We'll bring you details of that. A few thunderstorms in Florida. Just a little rain here in the lower Mississippi Valley. And in the west, this area of rainfall is going to continue to grow throughout the afternoon. Weather updates when we can get around to it. Now stay tuned for all the news.
Liberty is the statue, and much more.
CNN's Liberty coverage continues with Nancy Reagan officially opening the Statue of Liberty and go live to New York Harbor for the Parade of Ships. Celebrate Liberty tomorrow live on CNN. The Goodwill Games, a competition for peace, begins. Look for the opening highlights on Goodwill 86, Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
CNN celebrates the 2-day 4th of July. Live from the Statue of Liberty in New York, here is anchorwoman Mary Alice Williams.
We are witnessing a dazzling display of nautical salute to Lady Liberty on a sparkling day over New York Harbor right now. We've seen and will be seeing some 270 of the elegant, majestic sailing ships go by, 33 gray-hulled dreadnoughts, the International Naval Review, and the rest of the harbor is absolutely jam-packed with smaller pleasure craft that would make any of us think of yachts. We're not talking about the little teeny boats at all. It is quite a display, and millions of people have lined the shores around here on Governor's Island and all around New York Harbor to watch the procession. In the midst of this international celebration of liberty, international politics is very much in the forefront. This morning, actually at noon, President Reagan met with French President François Mitterrand over lunch. They were to discuss, or there was some speculation that they would discuss the possibility of Mitterrand, who is on his way to meet with Soviet Premier Gorbachev. Mr. Reagan it was speculated that he was going to ask Mitterrand to convey a message to Mr. Gorbachev about the terms and timing of a possible second summit. When Mr. Reagan was asked about that this morning, he said that he didn't think it would be proper to impose, but Mr. Reagan spoke with the news media before that luncheon, so we're still not sure if it actually happened or not. Other issues that came up in the brief chat that President Reagan had with reporters were the position in the Geneva arms talks. That is, of course, a cause of concern to both President Reagan and French President Mitterrand. He basically ducked ducked that question, said that it would be inappropriate to talk about that today. He was asked about the battle inside the White House between Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger and Secretary of State George Shultz over what the United States position ought to be. As it happened, both Shultz and Weinberger were standing on either side of the president at the moment he was asked that question, and he said, "They are at my right and my left hand, and I couldn't do without them." Basically, the president is trying to downplay any of the politics involved because he says this is a day for celebration, and that is certainly what is happening out here. The tall ships, as I said, have been the real stars of the show this morning, and on the Coast Guard bark, the American Eagle, our John Holloman is standing on the lead ship. John?
Mary Alice, I'll tell you, it has been a beautiful day all day long. We got here very early in the morning, about the time the sun arrived, and it's done nothing but get better. We're sailing back upriver. Actually, we're motoring back upriver. We're against the wind, and the Eagle is still making good progress. Some of these huge sails, the square sails, were unfurled a little while ago because we were trying to make time, and the wind is blowing right in our faces. We have those sails up at this point. I have someone to introduce to you who probably knows more about the early days of this tall ship than anyone else. As you probably heard, the Eagle was one of the reparations given to the United States by the government of Germany at the end of World War II. And one of the German cadets who was aboard the Eagle in the early days is with us now, Mr. Tito Holtkamp, who's now an executive at IBM Corporation. Mr. Holtkamp, tell us a little bit about what it was like here when you were in the German Navy on it so many years ago.
Well, for one thing, it was in the middle of the war, and we had a few 20-millimeter guns mounted on the ship for protection or for what, I don't know, but they were there, so that was one big difference. The other difference was that we didn't always have such nice weather as the Coast Guard has here. We, of course, didn't have any ladies on board, although we probably would have liked to have some.
You know, there's a book called The Eagle, which I picked up a couple of days ago. There are photographs of the German sailors out here taking a saltwater fire hose bath or something. Tell me about that.
Well, they tried to harden us, so the watch at 5 o'clock in the morning would fill basins all over the deck, and at 6 o'clock they'd chase us out of our hammocks. We had hammocks in those days, and we'd have to go on deck and wash ourselves. And it was kind of cold. We started this in February. By the time July came around, you were used to it.
There's another story in the book which was fascinating to me. It was about an incident when somebody did try to use these 20-millimeter guns, I guess, against an aircraft.
Well, one of our groups on one of the guns got scared in the morning when they couldn't identify a plane, and the identification signals got crossed up, and they fired some shots, and the plane landed next to us in the water. And out jumped a irate Air Force colonel who happened to be one rank higher than our captain, and he rode himself over and chewed us out. It turned out that we were a day behind with our signal logs.
I see. Well, I guess that could happen on any ship or in any military unit in the world.
Shouldn't, but it does, yes.
How do you feel today? You're a major participant in this parade of sail, and you know, you went under the Verrazano Narrow Bridge with all of us, and you must have done what I did and just craned your neck skyward, and then you saw the Statue of Liberty come into view. How did that make you feel?
Well, it was fantastic. It was goose pimple day. I was very happy to be here. I was very honored to have been invited. And of course, I can't help but remember when I came to New York first as an immigrant. Came on a boat, of course, in 1949, and didn't sleep all night, so excited about seeing the United States, and came around Brooklyn, and the first thing I saw was the lady there greeting us. And so today it was almost similar.
All right, Tito Holtkamp, thank you very much for joining us today here on CNN. It's a pleasure to meet you after reading much of your story in this book. Before we leave you, we'd like you to listen to the Coast Guard Academy Cadet Band, which was formed a very short time ago, brought out here to the Eagle. They have been practicing probably around the clock for the past several days to get ready. They are going to perform for us now the Coast Guard Anthem, which is Semper Paratus, which means always prepared. Beautiful music on a beautiful day off the shore of Manhattan. This is John Holloman, CNN Live aboard the Eagle. We're going to go now to CNN's Tom Mintier at Haven Point. Tom?
John, I'm on the other side of the harbor, on the New Jersey side, on the back side of the statue, where it's probably one of the closest points you can be to the statue without being on Governor's Island on the other side. Mostly it's photographers here on the island. There are a few residents that have come out to take a look at the parade. This wasn't the best seat in the house for the parade of tall ships, but you could see them pass through the several thousand pleasure craft that were on hand to wave them by as they went. But mostly it's photographers. For the past 2 days, they've been lining up here and preparing for tonight's gala fireworks, and the position they have offers them something that is very difficult to find anywhere else. As you look out into the bay, you can see the statue, and framed beautifully behind it is Manhattan. And this is the shot that will probably be on the covers of many magazines and inside many newspapers and books in the next few years when the fireworks go off tonight and sort of frame the city with the statue in the center of the harbor lit up. So the pictures are what we're going to see from Haven Point. There are probably 300, maybe 400 professional photographers here, and they're all set up and waiting for the fireworks tonight when they will make their pictures. And of course it will be several days before we can see those pictures, but we will have it live on CNN tonight. Now let's go across New York Harbor, past the statue, and over on the Manhattan side. Jeannie Mose is there in Battery Park. Jeannie?
Tom, we are at the very tip of Manhattan, the very southernmost tip, and while all the rest of you are watching the boats, we decided to go for a walk in lower Manhattan. Now that may not sound like much, but it is a feat to walk through those crowds, all the crowds that have converged down there. City block after city block has been closed to traffic, and the whole downtown area has been turned into one giant street fair that will continue for the next 3 days. Now, one phenomenon we've noticed about Liberty Weekend is the popularity of sailors. Any sailor in uniform, but particularly the ones from foreign countries. And a little while ago, we stumbled into some of those. What ship are you from?
Nederland Rheinzen.
What country's that?
Holland, Netherlands.
Where are you from?
I'm from New York.
What are you doing with all these guys?
Oh, I'm having a good time.
Why aren't you guys on the ship?
Because they're with me.
Why aren't you guys on the ship?
We have a free day today.
How's New York been?
Oh, nice.
Great.
We like it.
You're like a big hit in New York. All the sailors, everyone's going like nuts, huh?
That's great.
Have you noticed that? Is that true, though?
Yeah, everybody wants to take our pictures, so it's great.
And the women? Friendly?
Very friendly.
And the crowds in general here are very friendly. Folks are in a party mood. I'm Jeannie Mose reporting live from the Battery. Back to Mary Alice on Governor's Island.
Thank you, Jeannie. And earlier today, as I was saying, President Reagan had lunch with French President Francois Mitterrand. There had been some speculation prior to that lunch that Mr. Reagan would ask Mr. Mitterrand to convey a message from him to Soviet Premier Gorbachev, who Mitterrand is meeting with on Monday. When Mr. Reagan was asked about that this morning, he said that he thought it would be inappropriate to ask Mr. Mitterrand to be a messenger and that he would not want to impose. So apparently that was his plan before the luncheon. We don't know what happened during the luncheon yet. Last night, we saw for the first time the restored Statue of Liberty, after 2 years of work, be relit. She had been enshrouded in scaffolding for almost that entire 2 years, and New Yorkers were used to seeing it, but this was quite a sight for them. was a star-spangled sight last night, and if you didn't get your fill, there's a lot more of that coming tonight. First, fireworks from Washington, near the Washington Monument, and then, of course, the Big Bang, the fireworks everyone's been talking about, launched from 40 barges in a necklace around Manhattan. It should be quite something. You know, it's hard to imagine anyone, any American, who doesn't get a lump in his or her throat the first time he or she sees the Statue of Liberty. But for the immigrants coming through, she was the first sight of America and came to symbolize all of America, its opportunity and its hopes. Patrick Greenlaw has a look back at those immigrants and what they saw.
For 100 years, she has stood at America's golden door, a beacon of hope and opportunity. And for the nearly 20 million immigrants she welcomed, the lady's first touch lingers still.
We were awakened early in the morning. It was raining, it was bad weather, but we looked and we saw that wonderful, charming Statue of Liberty.
Everybody was up on deck. Early in the morning, I think every old, young, they had their children on their shoulders. And when we saw it, I think everybody was crying because they were so happy to be here.
When the people from the boat first noticed Statue of Liberty, they go like this. It was just like going to heaven. If there was such a place, it was America.
And when I saw the Liberty in front of me, I said, it can be. I saw the torch, I said, it can be real, that I can see it with my own eyes.
But all that I saw and realized was a lady in the water, a great big statue of a lady in the water. But everybody was clapping hands and they were just crying and hugging each other that they saw this great big lady. Of course, later on I found out that that was the Statue of Liberty, and that was the gateway to this beautiful country, America, where we're all going to lead a much better and freer life.
For so many, America is a lady, her lamp raised for freedom, her first touch, a lasting memory.
To me, it was, I used to see American movies. I used to say, oh, I'm here, you know. This is it. I can see it. This is America. I'm here.
For Liberty, I'm Patrick Greenlaw, CNN.
Liberty is brought to you by Ernst & Winnie, accountants, tax advisors, consultants, 350 offices worldwide.
The thousands of professionals at Ernst & Winnie salute Lady Liberty, but more than the statue itself, we salute the results of liberty, being able to pursue your dreams and achieve them, regardless of who you are or where you're from. Being able to travel as far as your talent can take you every day of your life. Achievement, a result of liberty, a result to celebrate.
It is conventional wisdom that the bulk of immigrants to America came through at the turn of the century and into about the early 1930s. As it happens, last year in 1985, the United States allowed in more legal immigrants, 570,000 legal immigrants, than it had in 1886, the year that the Statue of Liberty was dedicated. In fact, the number we let in last year was twice what it was in 1886. The most recent and far-reaching bill in the U.S. Senate about immigration law is called the Simpson-Mazzoli bill, and one of its sponsors, Senator Alan Simpson of Wyoming, joins us now from our New York bureau. Thanks for being with us, Senator.
It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
I'm glad you're here. It said that you knew very little about immigration before coming to the Senate. What are the most important things you've learned about the issue?
Well, you learn first that your own grandparents and great-grandparents mine came from Holland and England, so you learn that. And You learn that people don't make the distinction between legal and illegal immigration very well. They don't even make the distinction between refugees and immigrants. So it's an area filled with emotion, fear, guilt, and racism as we try to deal with the awesomeness of this Statue of Liberty that I'm here to commemorate and celebrate too. It's a tough issue for us.
Here we are celebrating the immigrant experience when a recent New York Times CBS News poll indicates that more people than ever, 49% of the American public, while they sympathize with the plight of immigrants, want much harsher restrictions on immigration.
Well, I think that comes from the fact that people, although the bill is certainly not a jobs bill, what the bill does is to penalize employers who knowingly hire illegal undocumented persons. It's an issue that when you describe to the people of the United States that the present law of the United States says it's legal to hire an illegal, but it's illegal for the illegal to work, it's nuts. It doesn't fit. And then you read the moving words of Emma Lazarus, but those words don't say, send us everyone you got either legally or illegally. What we're trying to do is somehow legalize the illegal flow. The illegal flow is gimmicking our systems and tilting us toward against our national heritage. If we don't correct illegal immigration, the heritage of the day we celebrate today and the lady in the harbor will begin to sour. That's the problem.
Specifically, what kind of restrictions can be imposed and can work without taking away from the policy of compassion that held true for so many years for these people?
Well, this is the real kicker. They'll say, I visited with the president of Mexico several years ago, and I said, what would you have us do? Although it's not a Mexican problem. 45% come from Mexico, another 25, 30% come from Central America, and the rest of them come from 80 different countries around the world. I said, what would you have us do? And he said, well, we wouldn't interfere with you as a sovereign country. I say, yes, but what would you have us do? And he said, well, just be sure that our people in the United States are treated with compassion and kindness. I say, how do we do that when they're here illegally and being exploited? That's your issue. It doesn't do any good to talk about compassion and civil rights when people are here in illegal status.
Some people who are more militant about this notion of compassion, perhaps, than others, are members of the sanctuary movement who've taken in illegal immigrants from countries that some that we do support and some that we don't. And they are being sentenced, a group of sanctuary movement members, in Arizona today. Do you think that the administration's policy will change anytime soon on the members of the sanctuary movement?
Well, I respectfully say that you've made the critical error. There is such a tremendous difference between a refugee and an immigrant. And there's an even more tremendous difference between a refugee and an illegal, undocumented person. A sanctuary is a magnificent act. If it's granted to people who are true refugees, that's a person fleeing persecution based on race, religion, national origin, or membership in a national or political organization. And it does not apply to a person who is a person coming to the United States to seek a job. Get this so clearly, this is critically important in the whole issue. If you were a refugee from Central America, whether from El Salvador or Nicaragua, the minute you hit Mexico, you've hit free ground. You are in refuge. You are not only in refuge, you're in a common land or a common area with a common language. And then to say that you come 2,000 miles more into a church basement in Tucson, stay 2 nights or 2 weeks and go on to Chicago to work in a meat plant, that's not sanctuary, that's gross distortion. And so let's get it sorted out and not play the game of emotion and hype. You show me a person who's a refugee, and I think sanctuary is a magnificent act. You show me a person who's coming to the United States just because they don't like the draft in their country, or they don't like the way the government runs, or somebody took their property, but that does not qualify one under the laws of the United States as a refugee.
That's an interesting notion. I think there is a widespread notion in this country that many of the immigrants who come here come because they don't think that, I mean, they don't like their own countries, and what the heck, they can come here and live off the public as part of welfare, and that comes out of the taxpayers' pockets. What are the real facts on that?
Well, take an example. Here you had the elections in El Salvador, and here are these people standing in line to vote in their country, and they did an exit poll and found out that 74% of them in the line ready to vote said they wanted to go to the United States of America. When we say that all of those people who come from El Salvador are refugees, that cannot be when you have a country where we have tourist visas all year long, where we have 23 flights a week, where we have international migration services meeting them when they come back to El Salvador to ask them if they're fearful. And then you have this tremendous difference between a Nicaraguan person fleeing the Sandinistas and a person fleeing the government of El Salvador. Some of these so-called sanctuary movement people don't want to see anybody from Nicaragua. They say, no, wait a minute, don't come in here. You're not we don't want to say there are any refugees from the Sandinistas. We want to say that they're all refugees from El Salvador. I guess what I would say is that if you don't like the president's policies in Central America, well, be honest about it and just say that. But don't try to work in the sanctuary movement and blend that magnificent act of grace into a total political argument.
Okay, thank you very much for being with us, Senator Alan Simpson of Wyoming, who is a sponsor of the Simpson-Mazzoli bill. Thanks a lot. CNN Special Liberty coverage will continue, culminating tonight in the big fireworks. And for someone who likes her fireworks, this is going to be a big one. We'll be back.
This is CNN, the world's most important network.
What's the only live half-hour TV program devoted entirely to showbiz? It's Showbiz Today, telling you about the latest movies.
And what's on TV, broadcast, cable, and home video.
The latest in theater.
And from the world of music.
I'm Liz Wickersham.
And I'm Lee Leonard. All that and more each weekday on Showbiz Today.
Personal invitation to Princess Margaret's Island Retreat or Malcolm Forbes' French Chateau may come once in a lifetime or once a month, as Architectural Digest gives you entry to the world's most celebrated homes, gardens, and decorator showrooms. Get 12 issues of Architectural Digest for just $29.95. That's $24 off the newsstand price. Call 1-800-257-1257. That's 1-800-257-1257.
Here in New York Harbor, where this majestic parade of sailing vessels passes behind us, there's one fascinating thing we did not get to see, and that is the choreographed maneuver to set these sails and turn the ships into what's been called the rarest of sea creatures, a full-rigged ship dancing with the wind. It is not easy. There are no hydraulics. There is no electricity to help. It's what's called Norwegian steam, back muscle, that gets those sails up. With me is Peter Stanford, president of the National Maritime Historical Society. Can you tell us, can you describe how those young sailors do that?
Well, it's different on the different ships and the different rigs, but the squaresails on the big ships, they go aloft and cast off the lines they have tied around them, which are called gaskets. There are special names for everything. And then down on deck they let go the ropes that hold the sails up to the yards, which are those cross sticks, and then they sheet home on the corners that have to get drawn down because you've got to hold the sail against.
And in a wind this heavy, those things snap hard. I mean, you can get hurt.
Oh, yes. You have to all work together. Everything's got to happen in exactly the right order. And it's just with the strength in your hands that you're controlling these thousands of horsepower that make those ships move it's easy enough in New York Harbor, but out in mid-ocean and a howling gale of wind is something else.
Although it's not so easy today, we are at flood tide here in New York Harbor this July 4th, which makes maneuvering those ships and berthing them very difficult indeed. I don't know if you've seen in the parade of sail, if you've really been able to spot the ratlines and the yard arms, those crossbars on the masts. But on each of the tall sailing vessels, they are filled with sailors standing up there, some of them as high as 305 feet into the air. There's a rule of the sea that it's one hand for the ship and one hand for yourself, right?
But you can't really do it. It's quite often both hands for the ship, and you sort of hang on with your belly or something like that, really. There are lots of operations that take two hands aloft.
All of these things can't be done in an anarchic fashion. They have to be done at certain intervals, and so there are 3 whistles used by the captains or whatever. I think you would know the names of those people. Can you explain how the whistle system works?
Well, whistles are used on naval and military ships. In the merchant ships, and most of these ships sail in the tradition of the merchant ships. They know, because they've done it together so often, they know just an order is given, then they jump to it. And the essence of it is you jump to it and make it happen.
When you blow the whistle, when the captain blows the whistle, it varies. He knows how to vary it in pitch and timbre so that it can give out as many as 50 different signals, and each man up on those masts understands which call is for him.
Yes, on naval ships, that's true. It is not really the essence of sailing, however. That is the merchant system, which is really done without any orders beyond the initial order, which is given to get in a sail or brace the yards around. People know their stations, they go to it, and they actually don't use or need whistles. And that is an even stronger example, if you will, of the tremendous unified nervous system that is a ship. It's an organic whole. It all has to work together. If you jump into a square rigger's crew, you can be a great football player or something and have lots of muscle, but it doesn't do any good. You've got to learn how to act precisely, and as you said before, in a choreographed way with all the other guys that are aboard.
So not only does the ship look like a dancer on the wind, but the men and women on that ship also have to be ballet dancers.
Very much so, and they've got to understand each other very well. They've got to get to know their shipmates and more or less make up for each other's weakness and that kind of thing. And you mentioned women. There's a great and growing component of women in these ships. It's a heritage of humanity, not just the male segment.
Right, but boy, that superstition that women were bad luck on a ship.
Yes, I've never understood that. Lots of Yankee skippers took their wives along. Seems to have been a superstition that was somewhat violated. One guy, Captain Patton, was very lucky he brought his wife along because he got stricken with brain fever in a terrible trip around Cape Horn in the 1850s. And the mate was rebellious and wanted to take the ship home. And his wife, Mary Patton, took over and took the ship in. She was an extraordinary woman, but she would have been extraordinary if she'd been a man. It was an extraordinary thing to do.
Another myth bites the dust.
Yes, I think so, yeah. And the British do not have their Sir Winston Churchill in this operation sail. She's busy in Europe, but she has a crew that's exclusively women. And she's famous. She does very well.
We're going to have a lot more coverage of this July 4th celebration. Of course, it's happening all over the country, not just here in New York Harbor. And we're going to Don Miller and Bella Shaw in Atlanta.
Okay, Mary Alice. Well, aside from all the Liberty activities, there's another special event going on today in Maynard, Texas, about 13 miles east of Austin.
It's the second Farm Aid concert organized to raise money for the nation's farmers. And we join it now, in progress.
wind outside, screaming bloody murder for souls left behind. The party in the backyard, underneath the pit barbecue, he's by the Sunday Klansman and his wrecking crew. I lived in Clarksville. I lived in Clarksville. I lived in Clarksville. I lived in Clarksville. On this 4th of July, I hope you think about some of the slaves that built the West. Next slide, see ya.
Just one of the 88 artists scheduled to perform at Farm Aid 2, which got underway about 7 o'clock this morning. 37,000 people apparently showed up, and traffic was backed all the way into Austin.
That's right. We'll have more on Farm Aid 2 throughout the day and more Liberty coverage right after this.
I can't believe it. Mommy forgot to put medicine on my cut. You know, to kill germs, she has to put on this Band-Aid bandage. I'll show you. Hey, what's this? Medicine?
Band-Aid brand medicated only from Johnson & Johnson has what no one else has. Medicine on the pad that kills germs and fights infection.
Hey, how did Mommy do that?
Only Band-Aid brand medicated kills germs, so you're always fighting infection. For bigger cuts, new medicated extra large.
When Frederick August Bartholdi created the first model of the Statue of Liberty in 1870, the United States Life Insurance Company was already 20 years old. Today, it's part of U.S. Life Corporation, a life insurance holding company celebrating its own 20th anniversary. The business community knows us for our financial strength, our independent agents for our stability, and our policyholders for our quality products. The quality of life is what we're all about.
Now you too can get VIP treatment and big savings just by carrying the Players Club Go Card. You'll save money on rooms, on top name entertainment, on food and beverages. And you'll never have to wait in long registration and show lines again. Look, you can stay at some of the finest resorts in the world's most exciting vacation cities. Hey, no strings attached to get the club's benefits. You listen to telly? Call Players Club today.
Here we are at the Statue of Liberty celebration, and I'm thinking about what happened 100 years ago when that statue was dedicated. And it was apparently not very different than it is this year. The New York Times wrote 100 4ths of July broke loose to exalt her name, and despite the calendar, rolled themselves into a delirious and glorious one. Of course, despite the calendar, meaning that it happened October 28th and not July 4th at all. In 1890, at the height of the immigration, Jacob Riis wrote a map of the city, colored to designate nationalities of immigrants who came through here, would show more stripes than the skin of a zebra and more colors than any rainbow. But the harbor then was a teeming harbor, one of the busiest on the eastern seaboard at the height of commercial shipping. And they wrote, during that ceremony, then streamed the people convergent rivers of life, hurrying and sweeping through 1,000 channels to the path of the pageant. They are eddying or gathered or running counter to the onward tide till the greatest thoroughfare overflowed and billows of humanity surged crosswise and splashed sprays of small boys to every ledge and cornice. You know, there's been a lot of criticism about this party, whether it is too extravagant, too glitzy, too involved with fat cats. It turns out today that it is very much a people's party, that there are so many people here lining all the shorelines as far as I can see, just here to watch. We should tell you that up in Windham, Connecticut, and of course there are 4th of July celebrations all over the country. I'm sure there's one in your town. In Windham, Connecticut, they've always had a parade on the 4th of July, but this year they couldn't find a band. So the town officials have asked the 20,000 residents to carry boom boxes, you know, those big noisy things, turn to a local radio station, which has reluctantly agreed to play John Philip Sousa marches, or did, from 11 to 11:50 this morning as their parade struts down Main Street. The chief organizer paid $175 out of her own pocket to hire 2 police officers required for a public march. We're going to have a report on that parade tonight at 9 o'clock, and I can't wait to see it. There was much concern about security here with 2 presidents, with all the people, and with such a world scrutiny of this event on this very small harbor. It's really only 12 square miles long. If past is prologue, we're going to be just fine. A decade ago, during the United States bicentennial celebration of Opsail, one of the 3 Opsails we've had, this is the 3rd, there was a great deal of concern about security and absolutely no problems. In fact, there was almost a family party atmosphere everywhere you went in this town then. And that seems to be happening today. We all presume that the meaning of liberty will last longer than this party, or perhaps the national hangover we'll all suffer collectively next week. We do have reports of an accident that occurred at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge at the entrance to New York Harbor. We are trying to get information on that accident, and of course we'll bring it to you just as soon as we get it. During 1976 Opsail, which was smaller than this one, but still the same problems, a flood tide in the harbor, in a harbor absolutely teeming with boats, they had planned for something like 1,600 accidents on the water, and they only had about 193, which, given the size of the crowd on that water, was not bad. None of them were fatal accidents or terribly serious at all. This time, security figures were very difficult to get because of the secrecy involved with the FBI and the Secret Service. But they have, I'm sure, planned for many, many more accidents than that. There are 60,000 boats in this harbor. That sounds like a lot. But this harbor holds 100,000, and there seems to be room for everyone. We don't know how many accidents they've planned for, but we do know that they've planned very carefully. In addition to Coast Guard patrol boats absolutely everywhere, there are New York City police patrol boats and customs boats out there. There are launches. There are rules of the road here in the harbor which have been modified, if you will, from the standard common sense rules of the road of any sailors because of the crowds. Instead of passing on a particular side in a channel, those requirements have been waived. The biggest requirement, of course, is do not embarrass a big ship. That's a nautical term, embarrass. It means that the USS Iowa is far too big and heavy to be able to move fast out of the way of a small craft. So the pleasure craft really have the onus on them to be responsible, to stay out of the way of these very big ships. And of course, the sailing ships can maneuver with even greater difficulty than the big naval ships. There is a $2,000 fine for jamming frequencies out here on the water. Ordinarily, the emergency frequency is channel 16. It is channel 16 here in New York Harbor today, and everyone has to stay off it. Most people who sail a lot switch from channel to channel, chatting with each other, calling from yacht to yacht, as it were. Everyone is required to stay off Channel 16 today and this weekend in the harbor, and anyone caught on that signal is going to get a $2,000 fine. Anybody caught jamming any other boat's frequency is going to get heavily fined as well. So they're taking the safety precautions out there very seriously indeed. Certain water lanes have been cleared. It's difficult for you to see it, I suspect, but behind me and all the way to the Statue of Liberty, it is absolutely clear so that there's an open view of the parade of sail, but even that parade is getting a little bit muddled. The ships that were supposed to be conforming in place in a long line have gotten a bit mixed up because some of the sails are bigger and going faster than others. But water lanes have been cleared from the other side of Governor's Island to Manhattan Island, where there are MASH units, mobile hospitals set up all over the southern part of the island. Water lanes have been cleared in case people can't get through the crowds on the street, and I can tell you, having walked on these streets all day today, that it is very difficult to get through them. So if there are accidents, they will be carried to Bellevue Hospital or Beekman Downtown Hospital or St. Vincent's by water route, and those lanes are cleared as well. We're going to take a break. We're going to get more information for you on what's happening up at the Verrazano Bridge. We'll be right back.
CNN's coverage of Liberty Celebration is brought to you by Metropolitan Life and affiliated companies.
Universal life, a philosophical breakthrough. It's not philosophy. It's a kind of life insurance from Metropolitan. Universal life means the cash value of your insurance earns interest at competitive market rates. Universal life, a metaphysical miracle. Within limits, you can skip payments or vary the amount of coverage. You mean it's a kind of insurance from Metropolitan? Yes. That's all right, too. Get Met. It pays.
In the midst of this international naval review, international politics, of course, follows President Reagan necessarily everywhere he goes. He has been staying at Pecanico Hills, the Rockefeller estate near White Plains in Westchester County, New York, and today met here on Governor's Island for luncheon with French President François Mitterrand. CNN's Charles Bierbauer, senior White House correspondent, will be with us soon from White Plains to give us a report on that. Now, just about an hour ago, there was a boating accident here in New York Harbor. The Coast Guard tells us that at least 2 crafts taking part in the Operation Sail procession have collided. One of the vessels was a 70-foot schooner based on Long Island. The other was one of the Dutch flat boats, the Plaat Bodem. One woman aboard the schooner was injured. She is being taken to a hospital in Manhattan. We suspect it is Bellevue, which will be the main hospital for serious accidents here. We don't know how the accident occurred or how seriously injured the woman is. We'll have more details as they become available. As we've said, it is flood tide right now in New York Harbor this July 4th, which makes maneuvering those sailing vessels out there very difficult. It makes berthing them very difficult. This Operation Sail, which is the 3rd to be in New York, was first the idea of a man named Frank Brainard, who had dreamed as a little boy sitting at his home in Long Island of seeing all the great sailing vessels here at one time. The sailing vessels and steamships, which were really his favorite. But it was President John F. Kennedy in 1964 who first okayed Operation Sail. He'd actually okayed it in 1962 and did not live to see it. The second one was, of course, in 1976, and this is the 3rd one. CNN senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer is now standing by in White Plains, New York, with a report on the President's Day. Charles?
Well, Mary Alice, the president got back to White Plains a little late, out to the Rockefeller estate. That lunch with President Mitterrand went on quite a bit longer than expected. National Security Advisor Poindexter would only say that it was very interesting, philosophical. Clearly, the prime topic was Mr. Mitterrand's trip next week to Moscow. He's going to have the meeting with Soviet Party boss Gorbachev that President Reagan would like to have later in the year. And the president acknowledged that he didn't think he should send any messages because clearly France and the United States have different relationships with Moscow.
Mr. President, are you going to send a message to Mr. Gorbachev with French President Mitterrand?
I don't think that would be appropriate to impose on him.
Gorbachev in his latest speech said you are still, the United States, still not serious about arms control.
Well, then he's just misinformed.
The president was asked as well when the United States would respond to Mr. Gorbachev's latest letter, one that the U.S. has had now for a couple of weeks and has been working on. Said the president, we are meeting when talking about it. Other officials say that there will be an official response to Mr. Gorbachev perhaps in the next couple of weeks. And we are told that some preliminary work is going on towards getting the schedule for the summit together. But that will take some time. There will have to be prior meetings before even Secretary of State Schultz and Mr. Shevardnadze get together, possibly in September, to set a date, still possibly November, for Mr. Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev, although we keep hearing now that it could slide even into the new year. Charles Beerbaer, CNN, with the president, White Plains, New York.
Thank you, Charles. And of course, President Reagan will be back here on Governor's Island tonight, where he'll stop over for a second before he goes to the USS JFK. He will be hosting a barbecue for 500 high school students. From there, he will watch a USO show and then press a button that will start the big fireworks. In our next hour, we will be talking with Governor Richard Lamb of Colorado about immigration. Liberty Weekend continues.